Critics and audiences tend to disagree on the quality of movies, especially on Rotten Tomatoes. You can visually see the difference between the critic scores and the audience scores, and that's even more true with the Disney live-action remakes. So today, we're gonna take a look at the live-action Mulan, Lion King, Little Mermaid, and the brand new Snow White, and decide which score is more accurate, the critic score or the audience score. So we're starting with Mulan, a film that had a very interesting release. It didn't play in US theaters at all because it came out during the pandemic, so it released on Disney Plus for a really expensive fee, and in theaters everywhere else that didn't have Disney Plus, which resulted in a total box office gross of $69 million. Nice. One of the biggest things people praise about this film was the visuals, but for the most part, I'm pretty mixed on them. A common complaint I and many other people have with other live-action Disney films, as well as other Disney productions like Marvel or Star Wars, is that the visuals can look really gray and bland. I think the idea of Disney slop became popular partly because of the look a lot of these movies have. I mean, they have the visual appeal of synthetic Krabby Patties.
What'd he say? Garbage?
However, Mulan doesn't really have that problem. Sometimes the movie can look really beautiful. It's bright and colorful, it makes full use of its expensive sets and costumes, and there are some moments where it shows creative use of sunlight and moonlight. But as a whole, the movie feels very artificial to me, and I'm gonna mention it a bunch later, but there is so much slow motion in this film that it at times feels like a Zack Snyder movie. But let's talk about Mulan herself, because this remake changed quite a bit about her from the original film, and I don't know if I have ever seen a film miss the point of a story this badly. In the original, Mulan was told she has to bring honor to her family, but she failed to do so in the traditional way. So when she took her father's place in the army, she goes on this character journey of working hard, becoming a soldier, and bringing honor to herself and her family by saving China from the Huns. Mulan has been a beloved character for almost 30 years because of how well written she is, and how inspiring her story is to virtually anyone. If you have a goal, you can work really hard to achieve that goal. It's a very simple story, and yet the 2020 Mulan messes it all up.
Do you mess up a goddamn sandwich? There is nothing on this mother.
This version of Mulan is, I guess, a demigod with magical chi powers. When we first see her as a kid, she's doing parkour with the chicken, and all the people in the village are like, ah, what a weirdo. She'll never bring honor to her family. And the rest of the story plays out relatively similar to the original. She joins the army, she fights the villain, she saves China, blah blah blah. But it completely removes the work. She doesn't work hard for any of her abilities or skills. The only time she actually struggles in the movie, the general tells her the chorus from "I'll make a man out of you," and now she's good. She's ready to fight virtually anyone. I feel like the filmmakers made this decision to try to be more empowering to young girls who would watch the movie, and while I can respect their attempt, they completely botched it. Because which story would be more relatable or empowering to young girls? The one about the girl who is just like everyone else and has goals just like everyone else, then puts in the work, pushes herself to the limits, faces obstacles and overcomes them, and eventually achieves her goals? Or the one about the girl who was born perfect, is able to overcome everything with little to no resistance, and succeeds? And if you weren't born perfect, you might as well give up. I'm afraid this version of Mulan girl bossed a little too close to the sun. I mean, for goodness sake, she slid across the wall like she's freaking Spider-Man.
I'm Spider-Man.
Also, Liu Yifei, the actress who plays Mulan, wasn't the best. There were moments where she showed some emotion, but most of the time she was exceptionally wooden and almost lifeless. She has the same blank expression on her face for like 70% of the film. Besides Mulan, the other characters are awful because it completely butchers the supporting cast of the original. It removes pivotal characters like Li Shang and Mushu and replaces them with nothing. And then other characters like Yao, Ling, Po, and the Cricket were turned into generic army soldiers without a smidge of personality. Like, I can't emphasize enough how unmemorable these guys were in this new version.
I gotta tell you, it was perfect. Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
The supporting characters were all completely mid. Like, Donnie Yen is objectively cool, but he can only do so much. And on top of the supporting characters, the two villains are also awful. You have Bori Khan and Witch Lady. They work together for most of the film, but Witch Lady decides to turn on him because she has weird powers just like Mulan and they're both so similar. So she sacrifices herself for her because Mulan is just such a cool person or whatever, and now she's dead. How sad. She's really boring. She doesn't add add much of anything to the overall story, and her entire character could be summed up by this clip from Spider-Man.
You and I are not so different.
And Boricon is just lame. The one big criticism people had for the original Mulan was Shan Yu. People thought he was a generic, boring villain. And Boricon is just Shan Yu without the aura. He's just a completely forgettable villain who gets killed in a really funny and disrespectful way. And while I showed you that scene, let's talk about the action sequences. The whole pitch for this new version of Mulan was that it was gonna have a more serious action movie tone. So there are a lot more action sequences, and I'll be honest, they're pretty rough. The fight choreography isn't even that bad. It's just how they're filmed and the editing that's the issue. A lot of these scenes overuse the hell out of slow motion. Did you really need to slow-mo this shot of her landing on her horse? Really? And it completely kills any momentum these fight scenes had. And whenever the action bits have more energy to them, they are choppily clipped together. Like, I don't know what else to say. These action scenes are just bad. They're bad to watch. The final thing I'll talk about with Mulan 2020 is something a ton of critics praised: the lack of musical numbers. Look, I'm a musical fan, and Honor to Us All, Reflection, I'll Make a Man Out of You, and A Girl Worth Fighting For are all certified bangers. But that doesn't mean I was opposed to having a Mulan movie without the music. But they didn't replace the songs with anything. The music in the original was important for progressing the story, and developing the characters, and understanding who these people are. And instead of replacing the musical numbers with more dialogue scenes, or anything to further develop the characters, they just make characters half-heartedly say lines from the original songs and call it a day.
Tranquil was the forest, but on fire within.
Can you shut the f up?
So as you could probably tell, I wasn't very fond of the Mulan remake. It truly felt like a soulless, uninspired, unmemorable movie. So I'm gonna give it a 2 out of 10. Looking at the critics and audience Rotten Tomato scores, I'm for sure leaning to the audience on this one. I genuinely do not know what the critics saw in this film, but surely the next movie can't possibly be worse. I don't actively hate a ton of movies, but some of my all-time least favorite films are X-Men Origins Wolverine, Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, like a third of Dwayne Johnson's movies, and the 2019 Lion King. Ever since I was a kid, the original Lion King has been one of my all-time favorite films. It has gorgeous animation, a perfect story, some banger musical numbers, and what I would consider to be Hans Zimmer's best ever score. And I wish I was talking about that movie, but instead I'm talking about this hollow garbage that at best is only ever a cheap imitation.
Know your place, trash.
Let's talk about the one good thing first. Yeah, the CGI is really phenomenal. The amount of detail on these animals and in these environments is astounding. I mean, if you told me this was a nature documentary, I would probably believe you. But while the CGI is really impressive, that is also a double-edged sword. The 2019 Lion King went for a very realistic aesthetic, which really doesn't work for a story about singing lions. The character models are very lacking in, well, character. They pretty much all look like generic animals now, so when they speak or sing, it feels unnatural, and making them as close to real animals as possible also removes all the facial emotion. I mean, really, Mufasa just died, and Simba is sitting there like... On top of the CGI making all the characters feel lifeless, the voice cast isn't much better either. Every single performance in this film is on a range from mid to actually terrible. Donald Glover is mostly fine as Simba. He's not remarkable, but he's also not awful. Beyonce's line delivery is very stilted and lacking in emotion, and James Earl Jones is a legend. He was the only voice actor deemed iconic enough to return from the original film, but you can tell he is a lot older here, and his voice is lacking the emotional impact that it had in the original.
You could have been killed. You deliberately disobeyed me. And what's worse, you put Nala in danger. You could have been killed. And what's worse, you put Nala in danger.
James Earl Jones is a brilliant actor, and it really sucks that we lost him last year, but I still can't defend this vocal performance. However, these three are by no means the worst of this voice cast. No, because pretty much everyone else is terrible. Chiwetel Ejiofor is very unfitting for Scar. He's really missing that playful sneakiness, that villainous tone that Jeremy Irons brought to the character. Seth Rogen is awful as Pumbaa. His delivery is flat, and his singing, oh my goodness, is it terrible.
When I was a young warthog!
We're gonna open this up And look at all this good meat that's in there. Those juices run.
Billy Eichner's Timon is just loud and not nearly as charming as Nathan Lane's version. And then there's my personal least favorite, John Oliver as Zazu. How the hell do we go from Mr. Bean to John Oliver? Every time I hear him speak, I wanna, dig straight down. I wanna sleep in the nether. I want to fly without an elytra. I'm really not a fan.
Our main story tonight concerns sports. The greatest activity you can do with balls after my favourite activity, reading.
As far as the story goes, it's pretty much just the same, but because of the CGI and the voice acting, none of the emotional moments hit the same way. Mufasa's death happened and I felt nothing. Simba remembered who he is and I felt nothing. He then climbs up Pride Rock and becomes king, and you guessed it, I felt nothing. It sounds like most of the scores from the original as well, so while that is still really fantastic, you can't credit it to this film because it didn't create it. Just about everything good about The Lion King came from the original, and none of it came from this 2019 version. And that's especially true with the songs. Oh boy. I love all of the music from the original Lion King. I mean, this soundtrack is so good. It got 3 Best Original Song nominations at the Oscars, but most of the songs in this new version are just not good. The Circle of Life is fine. I don't have many complaints about it. Be Prepared is truly awful. They scrapped most of the song, and now it just kind of sounds like a spoken word slam poem. Hakuna Matata is much more bland visually than the original, and features some awful Seth Rogen vocals. Can You Feel the Love Tonight is easily the best of the bunch. Donald Glover and Beyonce sound great together, and there are some nice visuals. And then there's the one that offends me the most. I Just Can't Wait to Be King. This song was my favorite as a kid, and it's still my favorite song from the soundtrack. And by God, they butchered it. This was the most visually interesting song from the original film. When Simba started singing, it transported the audience to this vibrant, colorful world where all the animals are singing along and form this crazy tower. And now it's bland, lifeless, and they just sort of run around and that's it. Overall, I hate this movie, and it's one of the few films I can honestly say shouldn't exist, so I'm giving it a 1 out of 10. Let's see how the critics and audiences felt about it. My goodness, those scores are high. I guess I'm gonna have to say I side with the critics, but still, even they were a lot more generous than me. But let's take a look at a later remake, The Little Mermaid. This was a film I remember causing a ton of uproar when it first released, so for the longest time, I never bothered to watch it, but after having seen it, I was surprised with how enjoyable it was. Let's talk about the cast first. Halle Bailey's casting was very controversial at the time. A lot of people didn't like that a character who was previously white is now being played by a black woman. But really, it doesn't matter. Ariel's race is a non-factor in the original story, and more importantly than that, Halle Bailey is actually pretty darn good. She's very joyful and charismatic in this role. She perfectly captures that curious whimsy that Ariel is supposed to have. But she's no slouch in the more dramatic or emotional moments either. She was very convincing. Also, it can't be easy acting without your voice, but she managed pretty darn well. And also, she has the voice of a siren. It's kinda crazy how pretty she sings. Her voice is so powerful, it even makes Optimus Prime cooler. The rest of the cast is solid as well. At first, I didn't love that they cast Melissa McCarthy as Ursula because it's the obvious casting, and a lot of the times the obvious casting can be super boring, but McCarthy doesn't phone it in. She actually puts in a fairly solid performance, and with the way she emotes and with her body language, she perfectly captures the essence of the villain from the original. Also, her singing is appropriately big and bombastic. Javier Bardem is pretty good as King Triton. He's very believable as this powerful ruler of the ocean, and his more emotional moments really hit hard. Jonah Hauer-King as Prince Eric is fine. There really isn't anything spectacular about his performance, but it's also not terrible. His singing isn't the best thing in the world though. The song they gave his character in this film sounds super artificial. I can't actually show a clip because Disney copyrights the hell out of their songs, so here's a Family Guy clip instead.
Hey Dad, that's a cool whip.
The Little Mermaid also has a sort of iffy voice cast. Jacob Tremblay as Flounder is solid, no complaints there. Daveed Diggs as Sebastian is an inspired casting choice. He is phenomenal. I mean, that's freaking Lafayette. But then, yeah, Awkwafina plays Scuttle. I don't blindly hate Awkwafina, but she is miscast in a ton of projects, and it's the same here. Every time Scuttle was on screen, I tensed up like someone was gonna hit me. The visuals of this film are a mixed bag. Because a lot of it takes place underwater, it is a CGI fest. And at times, it does look like artificial sludge. Whenever the lighting is dark, it looks terrible. Like when Ariel visits Ursula, or the ending action-y sequence, when Ariel is exploring the shipwreck and ah no, a shark! Fun fact about me, I'm terrified of sharks. They freak me the hell out. The CGI does look worlds better when there's light. You can see everything more clearly, the colors pop more, and the effects just look more believable. Most of the scenes on land look rather unremarkable, but there are a few moments that look great, like the iconic moment during the Part of Your World reprise, this shot of Ariel surfacing, and pretty much the entirety of Kiss the Girl. So while this film isn't revolutionary in terms of visuals, it for sure has its moments. The Little Mermaid really changed the game for Disney back in '89 because it was the first film they made that had influences from Broadway musicals, which led into the Renaissance era of Disney that everyone knows and loves. The Little Mermaid has one of the most beloved soundtracks, and this new film does a solid job at making changes to those classic tunes to make them more unique for this new film, while also adding a few new bops of its own. Part of Your World and Part of Your World reprise are just as majestic as they were back in the day. Visually, they're very similar to the older movie, but they updated the vocals to better fit Halle Bailey's unique voice. Under the Sea is still incredibly vibrant and colorful, and has some unique moments like the glowing jellyfish bit and the fish dance sequence, although they weirdly kept in the part where Sebastian lists off all the different fish playing instruments, even though we don't actually see said fish playing said instruments. Weird. Kiss the Girl is still very beautiful, and yeah, they did change a few of the lines to keep up with modern culture. It's really not that big of a deal. It's actually only 3 lines, and the meaning of the song is still exactly the same. And the new songs are pretty good. Wild Uncharted Waters is Eric's new song, and while the vocals weren't my favorite, the character and the emotion behind the song is solid. Eric is pretty much just saying, I will find this beautiful woman who may or may not be real, even if I die doing so, which real.
You and I are not so different.
Ariel gets a new song called For the First Time, and this is a really fun look into her mind as she sees all these human things for the first time. And then of course there's the scuttlebutt. I've made fun of this song several times on this channel, and it's just awful. I seriously don't know who approved this. It's harmful to human ears. The last thing I'm gonna mention about The Little Mermaid is the story. For the most part, it is the same as the original film, but it actually has some welcome additions and one iffy change. This version is nearly an hour longer than the '89 film, and a lot of that is new scenes between Ariel and Eric. These moments are a lot of fun and make the romance between the characters feel more believable. It also gave us this gem.
My Little Mermaid.
Huh?
However, the one change I really don't like is Ariel sailing the ship that impales Ursula instead of Eric, because this change really weakens the moment where King Triton decides humans aren't all that bad and gives Ariel her legs. Eric killing Ursula and saving Ariel was paramount to making the story make sense, but now it really doesn't. Despite its many flaws, the 2023 Little Mermaid was a surprisingly enjoyable experience. It had a good cast, some good music, and some nice visuals, and while I don't think it's better than the original, I can maybe see myself watching this one instead, which I cannot say for either Mulan or The Lion King. So I'm gonna give The Little Mermaid a 6.5 out of 10. Looking at the critics and audience scores, I completely understand both of these, but I think the critics saw some of the same flaws I did, so I'm gonna have to side with them on this one. But before we move on to Snow White, I just want to say, if you've enjoyed this video so far, why not hit that subscribe button? I post a ton of videos like this one every single month, and if you enjoy enjoyed watching me trash talk these Disney films, you're gonna love it when I post the Star Wars ranking, which will only happen when we hit 100,000 subscribers. So if you want to see that, make sure you're subscribed. Now let's take a look at the brand new Snow White. This is easily the most controversial movie in this video, as well as the whole year so far. And I'm going to address none of it. I'm sure there are plenty of videos on this platform that talk about whoever you hate from this movie, but I have no interest in that. I'm sticking to the actual film itself, which I feel very conflicted on. Let's start with the cast. Rachel Zegler is a very talented actress. Her first ever film was Steven Spielberg's West Side Story, where she played the lead, Maria, and I stand by saying that that was one of the best performances of this decade so far. So I was excited to see her in another musical role, and her singing is still absolutely wonderful. All the best songs in this film are the ones that feature her vocals, and I'm glad she didn't try to recreate that crazy ass vibrato from the original. In terms of her acting, it was kinda all over the place. There were moments where she was kinda flat, but there were also moments where she was really charming and showed the kindness that character is supposed to have. My personal favorite scene of hers was when she taught Dopey how to whistle. That was a really nice moment, and Zegler carried that scene. But on the flip side, we have Gal Gadot as the evil queen. She's one of those actors who has zero range whatsoever. She was mostly fine as Wonder Woman because she pretty much only ever had to be one note. And even then, she had some horrendous line delivery that people have been dunking on for years.
Say the line, Bart!
Kalel, no!
But great googly moogly, this is by far her worst ever performance. She's trying to play this over-the-top evil queen character, and it doesn't mesh with what anyone else is doing. Her line delivery is awful, her body movements are jarring, and she has a brand new song in this version, which I just have to say, I'm officially apologizing for everything I said about the scuttlebutt. This new Evil Queen song is exceptionally awful, as is Gal Gadot's singing. The rest of this cast is fine, if not unremarkable. Andrew Burnap is fine as Jonathan. All the voice actors for the dwarves do a good enough job. Also, Patrick Page voices the Magic Mirror. That's cool. He was Hades in Hades Town. He was also Green Goblin on Broadway.
Godspeed, Spider-Man.
A big thing people really criticized in this film was the CGI and visuals. And like with most of this movie, it's a mixed bag. The environments these characters are in look awful. Snow White's castle is really bland and looks kinda fake. The magical forest is sometimes either a CGI-filled mess or looks like a cheap made-for-TV set, but the actual CGI creatures and models look good. All the animals in this movie are incredibly adorable and look almost stylized. They look very similar to the animals in the original. And then there's the dwarves. The CGI dwarves are gonna be very hit or miss with people. At first, I honestly hated them. They creeped me the heck out, especially Dopey. It looks like if the kid from the Polar Express was put in a hydraulic press. But as the movie progressed, I honestly got used to them, and I think the quality of their CGI was solid. Alright, let's talk about some new songs. I like the direction this new film took in terms of the music. This new version is much more like a Broadway musical, just like the Renaissance films. Good Things Grow is a serviceable opening number. Waiting on a Wish is a I Want song, ripped straight out of the Disney Renaissance era, and features some impressive Rachel Zegler vocals. Hi Ho and Whistle While You Work are both updated from the original, and these are both bops. All Is Fair is the Queen's new song, and it's embarrassingly awful. Snow White and Jonathan have a couple new songs between them. Princess Problems, which is kinda lame, and A Hand Meets a Hand, which is honestly really sweet. So all in all, I like this new soundtrack. Not every song is a winner, but a good amount of them are home runs. However, the messiest part of this film has to be the story. It gets incredibly convoluted with the word fair. In the original story, it just meant beautiful. The magic mirror said Snow White was more beautiful than the queen, so she tried to have Snow White killed. But in this new version, the magic mirror says Snow White is fair because she's a nice person or whatever. But the evil queen is so stupid, she still thinks the mirror means beauty. The whole story could have been avoided if she just asked for a definition definition of fair.
You're not just wrong, you're stupid. And you're ugly.
I think the general themes of kindness winning over vanity are still there, but the mix of the classic story beats from the original and these new story moments of Snow White becoming a leader don't always mesh. It causes a bit of a pacing issue because it feels like the movie wants to tell a different story, but has to do all of the apple, dead, kiss, wake up stuff from the original. And while I don't think making this version a one-to-one remake of the original or making it a completely brand new story is the answer, they definitely could have made the newer stuff work better with the classic story. But with all that said, I think Snow White is really overhated. Is it perfect? No, absolutely not. Is it as bad as other Disney live action remakes? Also no. I would say maybe don't see it in theaters. It's probably not worth it, but still, I found enough about it to be enjoyable. So I'm giving Snow White a 5 out of 10. Looking at the critic and audience scores, I'm gonna have to side with the critics yet again. I did not expect the critics to have a 3-to-1 score against the audience in this video. That really caught me off guard. But what do you think? What are your favorite Disney live action remakes? Or do you not like any of them? Let me know down in the comments. And if you want to check out another video, you can click here to watch my ranking of every Captain America film. Or you can click on this video that YouTube picked out just for you.